Some of the tools that I use will include a couple of different sizes of Phillips screwdriver, an 18-inch combination square blade, 5/64 hex wrench, 1/16 hex wrench, a 1.5 millimeter hex wrench, that's for Skyline instruments, an 8/1000 shim. Now this is just a leaf from a set of feeler gauges. I just cut off the 8/1000 leaf and then bent it. A small ruler measured in 64ths. That short one like that may not be available to you, but these are available commonly at almost any hardware store. And if you need to adjust your preamp trimmer, a tiny, dinky, small little screwdriver. String winder, that's it. Hi, my name's Carl. I'm a luthier here at Lakland Basses, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about setting up your instrument. The first thing to do, if you're going to put new strings on, go ahead and do that first. If you have good strings on, then you go to the step where you identify any issues that you might have, such as string buzz or intonation problems. And there's a certain order in which everything has to be done so that everything gets done properly without having to redo it later on. So let's play the bass, and we're going to listen to it just acoustically to see what's going on. And we got a lot of fret slap up in the lower notes. See that disappear here. Now here's a rule of thumb for you to know. If you're getting fret buzz below the 6th fret, generally you need to loosen the truss rod a little bit. If you're getting fret buzz above the 6th fret, then generally you need to tighten the truss rod a little bit. And sometimes you need to mess with the action, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So I'm just going to make sure that it's properly in tune, and then I'm going to see how the fretboard is bent. We have to work it with the strings up to pitch, because that's how the fretboard is going to be curved later. When we make these instruments, we design them so there should be about 8/1000 of an inch relief between the nut and the 12th fret. There are a couple of ways of checking this. One way is with a 18-inch combination square and a piece of 8/1000 shim stock, and I measured that at the 6th fret. Now, not everybody has this, so I'm going to show you another way to do it too. But first of all, we can see that, remember I told you that if it's buzzing below the 6th fret, we have to loosen the truss rod, and you can see that there's a huge back bow in this instrument here. So I'm going to relieve the truss rod a little bit, and then check the tuning, and then we'll see if we have to relieve it a little bit more. Now I know that that's 8/1000 there. If it's touching there, and touching there, I know that that's 8/1000. So we've pretty much brought it back to its original release. Whoops. Much better. Already much better. Much better. So we'll go on with the string height now. I want to tell you about another method of fretboard adjustment that you can use like before the gig or before a session, just on an emergency basis. If you hold the string down at the 1st fret with your left hand, and with your right hand, with your right thumb, hold it down between 12 and 13. If you reach around as far as you can, as close to the 6th fret as possible, touch the string there and wiggle it. The amount of movement between the string and the 6th fret should be the thickness of a cheap business card, which works out to be about 8 to 10/1000 of an inch. So if you can get an idea as to what that looks like, just do this before the set, and if the string's laying on the frets, relieve it a little bit. If it's too far from the frets, tighten it a little bit. And don't forget about your buzz indicator. The next thing I want to tell you about is saddle heights. Now, saddle height should be determined by your right hand. If you have a real aggressive right hand, you may need a lot more room than people who play softly. So we generally set it to sort of medium-low setting. The measurements are between the 12th fret and the bottom of the string. When looking at this, it's very important to have the light shine underneath the string, between the string and the fingerboard. Otherwise, you get a shadow on your ruler. This little ruler is marked in 64ths of an inch. So the first measurement under the G string, between the G string and the 12th fret, should be 5/64ths. The second measurement between the fret and the D string should be about 5 1/4/64ths. 5 1/2, 5 3/4, and on a 5 string, 6/64ths. Now, these are just starting measurements. These are not meant to be ideal measurements or perfect measurements. This is just a starting point. As I say, that height should be determined by how fierce your right hand is. Now, saddle heights are adjusted with these little screws here. Now, somebody has gone to the trouble of making these saddles curve sort of with the fingerboard. Now, that's a little bit of a problem because that increases the string spread, and then the screws don't sit inside these little runnels in the tailpiece properly. So the first thing to do is to level all of these guys out so that the axis of these saddles are congruent with the surface of the bridge plate. Now they're all nice and straight because that's the direction that the force of the breakover of the string is going. So let's take a look under the string. That's pretty close to just 5/64ths. And this is too low, so we're going to have to turn this up a little bit. Because these threads here are 32 threads per inch, a full turn down here moves this distance 1/64th of an inch here. So if you need to go 1/4 64th, if you do a quarter turn, you're right there. If you need to go a whole 64th, do a whole turn, boom, you're right there. And so 5 1/4 64ths, 5 1/2 64ths, and 5 3/4. So that's pretty close. For me, this is a comfortable height. Some people might consider it to be a little bit low. They all work.